Nazir Daf Mem Hey contains three Mishnayos continuing the Gemara's and the Mishnayos discussion of the procedure of the ending of the Nazir period, talking about the Karbanos that he brings and the haircut, where the haircut is performed, after which carbon is performed, and what you do with the hair. And three Mishnayos will discuss the details of these halacha, and the Gemara will give the sources. Before we begin the first Mishnah, I'll just conclude the last sugya. We had been discussing a Zav who's bringing his carbon, where he's allowed to go. And the Gemara said he's allowed to go up to the Shar Nikanor, up to the door of the Azara. Can't go further than that. And we had said that is only if he's been to the mikvah, and it's talking about a Zav who saw two Re'iyos, two Zivos, and therefore he doesn't have to bring karbanos. And we had a machokes. What the reason for that is, Abayat said the reason is because a mechusar kippurim, mechusar kapar, somebody has to bring karbanos, still has a residual tumma on him, and he can't bring it. And now he concludes that point by saying the Torah is referring to Machane Leviyah. The Shar Nikanor is in Machane Leviyah, but it is called Ohel Moed, which generally refers to Machane Shechina. And the reason it's called that is to teach this halacha. And Mechusar Kapara, one who still has to bring karbanos, is not allowed to go into Machane Shechina. He's also not allowed to go into Machane Leviyah, and that's why this Machane Leviyah area is referred to as Mechusar Kapara. The Gemara asks, how do you know that a Mechusar Kapara is not allowed to go into Machane Shechina? So Gemara quotes a Brisa. Torah says Tamei, that's to include a Tful Yom, somebody who has gone to the mikvah but hasn't yet had the sunset. And then it says Otam Asabo, that's to include someone who has had sunset but hasn't yet brought his karbanos. Okay, now we get to the first Mishnah of Daf Mem Hey. The Mishnah discusses the procedure of the haircut of the Nazir ending his Nazir's period. And as we know, he has to bring three karbanos, a carbon, Ola, Chatas, and Shlamim. The Mishnah says he brings those karbanos. The question is, after which carbon does he cut his hair? Now, once he cuts his hair, he has to put it in the fire underneath the pot which is cooking one of those karbanos. And the question is, which one, and after which haircut, after which carbon does he do the haircut? Someone says everybody agrees B'di Eved, doesn't matter which carbon, whichever one he does it after, it's valid. The question is, what is he supposed to do l'chatchila? So here you have a machlokes. Rabbi Yehuda says it should be after the shlamim, and Rabbi Elazar says it's after the chatas, because chatas always goes first. You do the chatas first, and then you put it in the fire underneath. Now the Mishnah concludes with another apparently unrelated halacha. There's Rav Shimon ben Gamliel who says that if somebody brings three animals, and it doesn't say which is for which carbon, so whichever is befitting for that carbon works for that carbon. So you have a keves, a kivsa, and an ayel. Only one of them could be an ola, only one of them could be a shlamim, and only one of them could be a chatas. So each one is for whichever one fits. All right, now the Gemara begins with a brisa discussing the halacha of that we said that you have to do the haircut after the carbon shlamim, according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara wants to know the source of that. So the Brisa says it's learned out of the pasuk v'gilach Nazir Pesach Ohel Moed. He should do his haircut Pesach Ohel Moed. The Gemara says the Pesach Ohel Moed does not mean at the door of the Ohel Moed. Pesach Ohel Moed means relating to the shlamim. The shlamim is brought Pesach Ohel Moed, and it's referring to the carbon shlamim. You should do it right after the shlamim, and it should be burned under the pot that's cooking the shlamim. So the Gemara says, how do you know that's what it means? Maybe it means the Pashup Shad that should be brought at the door of the Ohel Moed. So the Gemara brings a number of reasons why it can't mean that. First of all, the Gemara says in Misvara, it's illogical that you should have a haircut taking place at the door of the Ohel Moed. That is not kavod. It's a bezoin for the Ohel Moed. Rabbi Shai says, true, it's a bezoin, but you don't need to say that as a svara. The Torah says you're not even allowed to build steps on the mizbeach because it's a bezoin to open your legs wide to go up the steps. Certainly, it would be a bezoin to take a haircut there. Now we have an insertion here that comes from the later Gaonim, which is not part of the Gemara itself, where it pretty much repeats this Gzeira. It repeats this drasha of Rabbi Shaya as a Kal V'chomer from the Mizbeach and the steps. And then the Gemara continues and says Rabbi Yitzchak says a different reason. You don't have to say it's because of Bizayon, it's because he has to be able to put it under the fire right away, and the fire that's cooking the Shlomim is in the Lishkas Nazirim. It's not at the Pesach Ohel Moed. So it can't be that he has to go do an extra step and go carry the cut hair to the Lishkas Nazirim. It has to be that he actually took the haircut in the Lishkas Nazirim, because the Torah says V'lakach es sa'arosho es sa'arosh nizro v'nasan al eish. You do a v'lakach, you do a v'nasan. You take it and you put it in the fire. You don't have to go bring it. So there can't be another step. It's got to be done in the place where the fire is. There's a different version which quotes Rabbi Yitzchak and says that the Torah is referring to a shlamim. How do you know it's referring to a shlamim? Maybe it really means you're supposed to bring it at the door of the Ohel Moed. The pasuk therefore says, "V'laka chesar rosh nizro." It has to be done in the place where it is being cooked. Very similar to the previous drasha. Now, the Gemara brings another limud here from Pesach Ohel Moed. The Gemara brings Abba Chanan, who says name of Rabbi Eliezer, that the phrase "V'gilach Nazir Pesach Ohel Moed" means that the door of the Ohel Moed has to be open. You can only do the haircut when the door is open. Rav Shimon Shezuri says it's to teach that only the male Nazir does a haircut there, but the Nazira, female Nazir, does not do a haircut there, and that's because in order to do a haircut she has to expose her hair, and you're afraid that that will cause Yetzer Hara amongst the young Kohanim. So the Gemara says, but how come a Sota is allowed to reveal her hair there? She has her hair exposed in the Azar, and you don't say that that's a problem with the Perchikuna. The Gemara says that's different because she's in a state of disgrace. She's not made up, and she's being made to be disgraced at that time. It won't cause Yetzer Hara to attack them. However, this one, who is a Nazira, is in a state of presentability, and therefore you are concerned for that. Now we get the next Mishnah, which discusses when the hair has to be placed in the fire underneath the pot that's cooking the shlamim. So there are 4 cases. As we know, the haircut can be done anywhere. It does not have to be at the entrance to the Ohel Moed. It could be in the Beis HaMikdash, could be in the rest of Yerushalayim, or even the rest of Eretz Yisrael. And the question, so we have 4 cases. First of all, is it talking about a Nazir Tameh or a Nazir Tahar? Second of all, was the haircut in the Lishkas Nazirim where the shlamim is being cooked and you could just put it right underneath, or is it somewhere else? So Machlokes Tanakama and Rabbi Meir. According to the Tanakama, you put the hair in the fire only if it was a Nazir Tahar, that the haircut was being performed in the Beis HaMikdash in the Lishkas Nazirim. If, however, it was being performed somewhere else, or if it was a Nazir Tameh wherever it is, all those 3 cases, you would not put the hair in the fire. According to Rabbi Meir, it's the opposite. You put all the hair in the fire, except for the most extreme case of a Nazir Tameh outside of the Beis HaMikdash, somewhere else in Eretz Yisrael. That's the only case where it was not put in the fire. All other cases were put in the fire. If it was a Nazir Tahar, wherever it is, and if it was a Nazir Tameh, if it was in the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara now begins, and the Gemara quotes a brisa that has another interesting halacha about the burning of the hair. So the brisa says they didn't just throw the hair into the fire under the pot, they would actually take a spoonful of the liquid cooking in the pot with the piece of the shlamim, and they would pour it on the hair and then throw it into the fire. Now, this is the carbon shlamim. The hair went under the carbon shlamim. Says the brisa, it could also be put under the fire which had the chatas or the asham, and we'll be yaitz with that also. The Gemara right away interjects, there is no carbon asham for a nazir. So Gemara says that's so when a nazir tameh. A nazir tameh has to bring a chatas ha'olah and an asham. So if there would be under the asham, that would be okay as well. Now the Gemara says, what is the source of the halacha that you put the sauce on it, you put the liquid on it? So the Gemara quotes a limud, and the Gemara is going to have a number of other limud from the same pasuk. It says Asher Tachas Zevach HaShlamim. The Gemara has a drasha there. Zevach HaShlamim. It's called Zevach HaShlamim and not just Shlamim, to show that you take from the Zevach, from the carbon, and put it on the hair itself, and then put it under the fire, in the fire, which is underneath the kli cooking the carbon. Now, how do you know that it can also be put under the chatas? So the Gemara says, because it says zevach, the word zevach, to include the chatas and the asham. So what do you mean? Zevach, you just told me, is to teach me that you put the sauce on. So the Gemara says, no. If it would only be teaching me you put the sauce on, it should say rotev hashlamim. Why does it say zevach hashlamim? That's to teach me a second halacha. The fact that it uses the term zevach to teach me this halacha teaches me another thing. You could also put it under the chatas and the asham, which are also called zevach. Now, if it only meant to teach me that you could put it under the chatas and the asham, it could have said shlamim v'zevach. Why does it say zevach hashlamim? So that phraseology is to teach me that there's another halacha here, and that's that you put the sauce on it. The Gemara now quotes another brisa that says they put everything underneath. This is going to be the opinions of our Mishnah plus another one. So according to the first opinion, the placing of the hair in the fire was in everything except for a tameh, that is a Nazir tameh that had his haircut performed somewhere in Eretz Yisrael outside the Beis Hamikdash. That's Rabbi Meir's opinion, like we saw in the Mishnah, and that's because that hair required kavura, burial. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, which is not quoted in our Mishnah, the Brisa brings, is that there's a separate rule for all Nazirim Tahorim, and a separate rule for all Nazirim Tameim. Tahorim all put the hair under the pot, and Tameim all did not put the hair under the pot. It doesn't matter where they were. And of course, the Chachamim, as we saw in our Mishnah, says that they put everything under the pot unless it was a tahar that was in the mikdash. They didn't put anything under the pot except for a tahar in the mikdash. That was the only one that was done properly, and therefore that was the only one where they put the hair underneath the pot. Now we get to our last Mishnah, with which we'll conclude the daf. So the Mishnah continues the procedure. So the Mishnah says they would cook the shlamim. It could possibly be what's called bishul, which is proper cooking, or something called a shlika. Shlika is defined alternately by Rishonim in different places as partially cooked or as overcooked. Then the Kohen would take the cooked zeroah, the cooked leg of the carbon shlamim, which was an aisle, and he would take a loaf of matzah from the basket and a cracker of matzah, which was also brought by the Nazir. He put all these three things in the Nazir's hands, and together they would wave it, the full waving procedure. After that, the procedure is over, and the Nazir is allowed to drink wine, according to the Tanakama. He's allowed to drink wine, he's allowed to be batami to mesim, and of course his hair is already cut, so you don't need to worry about that. Rabbi Shimon, though, says you don't have to wait for that. Once the blood is put on the mizbeach of the karbanos, that is when he's no longer Nazir and he's allowed to do those things.